I mean, people are shocked today that Trump is betraying Ukraine. He doesn't have a real ideology. It's about him, what's good for him. And he's been in bed with the Russians for a long time. I don't see that changing at all as long as he's president.
So a lot of the talk around Trump being a Russian asset, some of it gets dismissed as, conspiracy theories, and it's all circumstantial evidence. What would you say to those accusations?
Well, first of all, I want to distinguish between an asset and an agent. And an agent is someone who knows he has signed on with the KGB. He can be given specific tasks. He's actually paid by them. That's not the way it works with an asset. The KGB made a point of cultivating powerful businessmen. I'm thinking of Armand Hammer, who goes back to the days of Vladimir Lenin and Joseph Stalin. And he was an enormously wealthy American oil man who was very much an asset. And he was sort of aging out when the KGB began cultivating Trump. You can say it is circumstantial, but there are an awful lot of circumstances. I've written 2 books about it. There's one point after another. It's backed up by a lot of documentation. And we have on the record interviews with Yuri Shvets, who was in Washington Station with the KGB, recruiting American assets for the KGB back in the 80s when his colleagues at New York Station were cultivating Donald Trump.
How certain are you that Donald Trump is a Russian asset?
Completely certain. I've written 2 books about it, House of Trump, House of Putin, and American Compromat, and not a single fact has been challenged in my reporting. And it really goes back to 1980, and I take it step by step in each book, and each of those books has roughly 1,000 footnotes documenting it. But you go back to 1980 when Donald Trump was really just starting out and had what was really his first successful real estate venture. He's had a lot of failures. This one was actually a success when he developed the Grand Hyatt Hotel right near Grand Central Station here in New York. And he needed, like every big hotel, he needed lots of TV sets. And he ended up buying them from the Joy Ludd Electronics Store, which was a front for the KGB. And I got that information from a former agent with the KGB, Yuri Shvets, and it really all started from that. They were seeking, they sent out a spotter agent, that is someone who's trying to recruit talent for someone who can help the KGB later on, and they came to Donald Trump. And that set off a series of meetings and events which led to Trump's first visit in Moscow in 1987.
Now, I know that these events span decades, obviously. You're talking about the 80s, we're in 2025 now. If you had to pick 3 things that were the biggest pieces of evidence that Donald Trump is a Russian asset, what would you choose?
So in 1984, a man named David Bogadin came to Trump Tower, which is a crown jewel in Trump's Trump's buildings, and he put down $6 million on the table and bought 5 condos. What was interesting about that was, according to FBI files, Bogadin was a member of the Russian mafia. And this was the first of many such people who were affiliated with the Russian mafia. I found a total of 13 people who either owned or lived in Trump Tower or other Trump buildings, or owned condos and other ones. So Trump was really hosting the Russian mafia for many years before he even ran for president. So that's one event. Another was, as I said, in 1980, when he went to Moscow in 1987, this was a visit that was set up by the KGB, according to Yuri Shvets, who was in the KGB. And when Trump got there, he was sort of groomed by the KGB. He came back, and a lot of people have forgotten this, but he made a brief abortive run for president in 1988. And among other things, he took out a full-page ad in the New York Times that was assailing America's alliance with NATO. I mean, people are shocked today that Trump is betraying Ukraine, he's betraying Europe, he's siding with Putin instead of that. Well, he did it as early as 1987 when he was starting to run for the presidency in 1988, and that is very well documented. It was printed in the New York Times. It's exactly the foreign policy he is acting out today that is so horrifying. In that, I mean, this is the end of NATO. It's the end of the Western alliance. Trump is allying with Vladimir Putin and against Ukraine and all of Western Europe. And from an American point of view, I think it's as horrifying as it must be for the Ukrainians.
And it's like the third example. Is there anything like these trips to Moscow or anything along those lines which has happened more recently?
Well, more recently, you saw him during his first term in office as president, and when he met with Putin in Helsinki, he essentially said that he trusted Putin far more than American intelligence. And what we see happening now is he is essentially destroying Western intelligence. I can't imagine Ukraine or any European partners wanting to share intelligence with the United States as long as Trump is president, because it's likely to pass straight along to Vladimir Putin.
And do you think there's anything, I mean, some of the people who are in his administration have also faced similar accusations about closeness to Russia? I'm thinking Tulsi Gabbard, for example. Do you think that there is something behind that as well, or does Donald Trump just think she'd make a really good director of national intelligence?
I'm certain there's something behind it. What Trump has done, he's wiping away the whole system of checks and balances. That is, Trump's cabinet appointees, and that would include Tulsi Gabbard, it includes Kash Patel, who's the new head of the FBI. They're supposed to be confirmed by the Senate, but Trump is doing it in a way that he's appointing only loyalists, people who have no real qualifications, and I think it would be crazy for what have been our allies to continue to trust the United States anymore.
So people who defend Trump and his actions on Ukraine and NATO would perhaps argue that he isn't a Russian asset, he's just a transactional president and he's just trying to, you know, get the best deal for America. What would you say to those people?
Well, I think he's trying to get the best deal for Donald Trump. I mean, he doesn't have a real ideology. It's about him, what's good for him. And he's been in bed with the Russians for a long time. I don't see that changing at all as long as he's president. And there may be, there likely will be a lot of infighting within the Trump administration. You have people like Elon Musk, who's enormously powerful now, but Steve Bannon, for example, really doesn't like Musk. That could well erupt into a battle. But none of them really can you see them working with NATO in the way the United States has worked with NATO for more than for 80 years, roughly. It's been the most powerful geopolitical alliance in the history of the planet. And if you look at the Western alliance, it's helped develop strong democratic institutions throughout Europe. It's developed strong market economies. Trump is throwing that out the window so he can ally with Putin. And it's really quite horrifying.
And just last week, I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, but there was a Facebook post from somebody who professes to be part of the KGB in Kazakhstan during the 1980s. And he was also saying that Trump was recruited during the 1980s. Did you see that?
Yes, I'm aware of that post. I have not been able to corroborate it, and I would have questions whether, if I'm not mistaken, he was talking about the 6th directorate in the KGB. I'm not sure they were recruiting American assets, and the 1st director and the 2nd director of the KGB were doing that mostly. So I really can't corroborate it.
And so just like, take off your academic author hat for a second, and just as like an American citizen, like how does all of this make you feel, and how worried are you?
I'm petrified, to be honest. When I grew up, the movie that I loved in my childhood was The Manchurian Candidate, the original version, the 1962 version. But it posited that the communists had gotten inside the White House. I mean, that was the whole premise. And it was seen as incredibly conspiratorial. The idea that it could actually happen in some way is just breathtaking. And I think we're entering a new era in the United States, and we have to fight back because I would very much like to keep an alliance with my friends in Europe.
On February 27th, the Kyiv Independent will present a new film, When the Water Screams, an investigative documentary by Olesya Bida. It shows how Russian occupation authorities in the eastern bank of Kherson and the Russian military obstructed the evacuation of civilians after the explosion at Kakhovka Dam. The work of the Kyiv Independent is only possible because of our members. Go to kyivindependent.com/membership and support us there.